Welcome everyone. This is a very important video where we will review the state of the German election that happened yesterday and was probably the most important election over the last 30 years of Germany. So before we jump into the interpretation, let's take a quick look what actually happened and what the results are. So here I have a little excerpt. These are the German election results as reported by Deutsche Welle. Basically, these are the final results. And what we see, the current coalition of the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP have lost an insane amount of votes, roughly 38% of their previous number of votes, right? So they got completely punished for what they have done, and they have done terrible things to Germany. Basically, leftist politics, open borders, more Brussels, complete devastation of the German industry, of the energy politics. It was a complete disaster. And foreign policy, don't get me started. So they basically were full-on globalist policies that have already been proven to be failing, and where we saw Trump in the United States totally changing direction. The Germans didn't get the message. Very bad. So the winner of the evening will be, or was, the CDU-CSU. These are the conservatives. They are an old party, Christian Democrats, and this is the Bavarian subsidiary of them, the CSU. So together they cover Germany. This result looks like it's the strongest last night, but it's actually a very bad result. One of the worst results they ever got in the history, their own history, 28%. The biggest winner of the night, of course, is the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland. That is a new right-wing party, pretty much very similar program to the CDU, with the exception of foreign policy and EU-focused policy, where the AfD is a little more Germany-focused and more in line with Trump. So this party is very new. I think 13 years in total, so very, very young for Germany. The SPD, for example, has the worst results in 130 years. So since 1890, that's the worst result. The AfD is only 13 years old and has doubled its result, 10 points to 20 points. Actually, the final results are a little, these are not the final results, sorry. The final results are a little higher, 20.8. And the other big winner, funnily enough, is the left party, who are literally communists, right? These people don't even say they're socialists. So these people are crazy. This is the former East German dictatorship party. So it's pretty stunning that they got such a big result. They won young people, and the right wingers, the AfD, also won among young people. So both of them got the youth vote. They're basically both protest parties, because what's happening here is a total disaster. So still, what's going to happen is that these guys, CDU, CSU, can now form a coalition with the SPD, because the CDU, CSU has said they're not going to form a coalition with the AfD, despite their programs basically being identical when it comes to the key topics outside foreign policy. In the industrial and economic policy, migration policy is pretty much the same, because the CDU, CSU started copying the entire program of the AfD recently. So the strategy of the CDU and CSU is to copy the AfD, while also saying they will never form a coalition with these guys, because they say, oh, these are far-right people. I think strategically what's behind it is that they are so overlapping that the CDU is very scared that if they allow the AfD, which represents more of the will of the people right now, into a coalition, into a government, then all the CDU voters are going to ask themselves, why would we vote not for the real thing, but for you guys? So now they decide to go into a coalition with the SPD. There's one big problem here, that the SPD is basically blocking all the key policies of the CDU, CSU that are also AfD policies. So the SPD is a very left-wing party. They are for open borders. They are for basically eradicating German culture. They welcome, African and Arab immigration. Don't ask me why, but that's what they love. They also love to undermine the German industry and economy, because it's capitalist. And so all these points of the CDU, CSU to strengthen the economy, to deregulate, and to crack down on illegal migration that is vastly worse in Germany than in the United States, where it's already very bad. the SPD is going to block all of these things. So all the promises the CDU made that they are like the AfD will not be able to be kept by Merz, the chancellor, the new chancellor. And the AfD already has pointed out that this will be a very short-lived government because of that they will fail in the next 2 years probably. I agree. I think that's going to happen. The AfD has also offered to vote with the CDU and CSU on critical topics, which is interesting. So if you form a coalition government, for everyone watching in America who's not familiar with these weird government systems, in America you either have Republicans or Democrats. If the Republicans own the House and the White House, and the Senate, which they do right now, they can basically govern, right? But in these kind of countries where you have all these random parties, you need to form a coalition, which means you're picking a junior partner or multiple junior partners, and then have an agreement that you kind of vote together on things. So you are creating a synthetic majority. But the interesting thing here is if you have someone you hate, like the CDU, the leadership of the CDU hates the AfD, but especially they hate them because they have identical policies. So the interesting thing here is maybe you are not forming a coalition with the AfD, but you allow them to vote on your stuff. So imagine you have one guy and the other guy, they want the same thing, but they hate each other, so they can't work in a government. But what does it mean to have a government? One very important piece of the government means that you are voting on things, right, in the parliament. So the AfD already has communicated, we are happy to vote with you guys. You can hate us all day long, but maybe we help Germany and actually pass all this legislation that you need. Obviously, that creates a problem if you form a coalition with the SPD and then have the AfD vote for all your stuff because it is all messed up. So in other words, this is very unstable and it's going to create many problems. Okay, what does it all mean? I want to take this opportunity talking about the election to share my thoughts, number one, on Germany and on Europe, and number two, on democracy at large. Because what it means for Germany is that the Germans now, 80% of Germans, have basically voted for continuing the status quo. Now you have to understand the status quo in Germany is extremely bad. They have inflation. Their status on the world stage has completely been diminished. They have been humiliated through very, very incompetent and bad leadership. That is very embarrassing. The Greens and all these people. So, of course, Putin doesn't take them seriously. Trump doesn't take them seriously. Xi Jinping doesn't take them seriously. Everyone thinks, what kind of clown show is that? And most Germans kind of feel it a little bit. Yeah, we have a bunch of clowns running the country. That's a little embarrassing. It not just looks bad, it is also very unhealthy for the economy, for example. So the German economy is in recession, is in free fall, because the Greens and the other leftists in the coalition have decided to pull the rug on German energy. They have literally stopped German energy production. They have stopped Russian gas imports, and so on and so forth, which is insane if you're the third largest economy and you need all that energy. I mean, this is all not rocket science. They have also created more dependencies on Brussels, on the European Union, which is also a complete joke and nightmare how it's being managed. They have, in addition to that, alienated both Putin and the United States, Trump, right? They have said the worst things, these so-called leaders. They have said the worst things about Trump, which was a dumb move, obviously. Trump is not happy and will punish them very badly. That's also why JD Vance and Elon have endorsed the AfD, which is the only sane party right now. So, in other words, Germany is going down hard. And the biggest problem of this whole thing is, of course, migration. And if you think in the United States, you know what bad migration is, illegal immigration, in Europe, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole magnitude worse. Because whatever you think of illegal Hispanic immigration, there are drugs, there are criminals coming over the southern border. I get it. But, when you meet people who are illegally in the United States, I'm totally against that. I'm totally against illegal immigration. But most of them are hard workers. Most of them are kind of integrated and try their best, right? As I said, I'm totally against it and I'm all for deportations. But when I look at the quality of illegal immigrants of the United States versus Europe, it's a very different ballgame because they have in Europe, you have African and Arab gangs and all kinds of really bad things that are ridiculously bad. You have terror attacks all day long. Every week in Germany, you had a horrible Islamic terror attack. Always the same type of people. So you're talking about a whole different problem there, where it's literally about the destruction of your local culture in a much more stark way than in the United States. And still, they don't vote for the Trump equivalent. They are voting for the status quo. So this is all very astonishing. And some people, become a little desperate and disillusioned about democracy. I know a lot of my German friends who say, why do I even vote? Right? How am I in a country where 80% of the people, while their women get raped, their children get murdered in terror attacks, literally go out on the street and join these demos against the right wing and vote for the status quo while your country in front of you is deteriorating, your children are at risk when they go to school. It's a madhouse. And so there's a lot of frustration how this could have happened and why these people voted for a status quo. So I want to first give you my quick opinion. I think Germany is going down. It's going to be really bad. They're already in a bad state. It's going to continue to be bad and accelerate over the next 2 years. The 2 years are speculative that this government will implode. Once you have a new election, maybe in 2027 or 28 or whenever, the question is what happens next. Can the AfD actually get enough votes to actually form a government with the CDU? Who knows? Like, I'm cautious about these predictions. It's Germany, you never know. So in total, pretty bad. I think what's very interesting here is to look at it from a democracy theoretic perspective. Why does democracy fail in Germany? Why do people vote against their own interests when it's so blatantly obvious and it's so stark? We are talking about violence and terrible things. And I want to point out that democracy is not what it seems. And you saw in my title here, they cheated. What do I mean by they cheated? Who cheated whom? Well, it was a little bit attention grabbing. The real interpretation here is that we need to understand that democracy is this flat, assumption that all votes count, that all citizens are the same, and that in a democracy, everyone is well informed and casts their vote, and then the majority wins. That is not how it works. It's not how it works because, in reality, democracy is a multi-layered system of elites and power and control. And the actual voters are just the end function of this whole thing. They don't have their own opinion because most people are not very smart. They're not very informed. They cannot think strategically. So they need someone to tell them what to do. And that works in all countries pretty well. I'm not saying I want it to be like that. I'm saying it is like that. In all Western democracies, where you have officially one vote per citizen, there are meta systems of control to control these votes. And these votes are on a normal distribution. Some of them are hard to influence. Some of them are enlightened, strategic thinkers like you guys who watch my channel, like many Germans who watch the other channels on YouTube. These 200, 300,000 people who watch Aktien mit Kopf and all these Vermieter-Tagebuch, like the smart guys who follow Naomi on X, like all the people who are high information voters, who gravitate towards the AfD, they are not easily influenced because they form their own opinions. But that's at best, at absolute best, 10 million people in Germany. And that's like completely already exaggerated. So what about the other 50 or 40 million who vote? The most voters are just a function of the media and what they're being fed. Not a big surprise to most of you, but we have to also understand this structurally and not be mad about it, not finger point. It's just a reality that 80, 90% of voters have no opinion. They cannot form a strategic thought. They go with what they're being told. And the next question is, well, but who tells them that? What are these systems of control in a democracy? It's the media. And to understand the media landscape, we have to understand who the media is, who owns that media, and how the media elites get their consensus and who controls that whole debate, what's okay and what's not. And you saw that in Germany, by the way, that the AfD could never make its point, right? They're being absolutely bullied. They're being absolutely discriminated in the most unfair, insane way that we know how it looks like from the Trump election, right? If you go on MSNBC or CNN, there was never any kind of rational, fair reporting on Trump or any kind of problem. It was all blatant and complete propaganda. So to understand democracy, we have to understand media power. We have to quantify the whole thing. We have to understand how much of the media power in Germany, for example, is under state control. I have some very interesting topics here. Let's just jump straight into it and, shed some light on what's going on. So I asked Grok about some basic questions. Here you see Grok, and I asked them, public broadcasting in Germany. These are state-controlled German media, ARD, ZDF, but also all the subsidiaries of ARD. So each state in Germany has all these state-controlled little stations, and then they have these big federal stations of ARD and ZDF. And what Grok comes up with, and I think that's pretty accurate, 40% of the media landscape, 40% of the entire market in Germany, everything is controlled by the state. That's nuts. That is not the case in the United States, where you just have PBS and these crappy stations. So 40% is already purely state controlled. And I would estimate another 40 to 50% is controlled by the indirectly controlled media, by Stern, Spiegel, Zeit, by these big outlets that are privately owned, but effectively directly state controlled. Similar to in the United States, where the Democratic Party has total control of the New York Times, of the Washington Post, maybe not that much anymore, Washington Post, but of the New York Times, of MSNBC, CNN, and so on. So the state-controlled media is a whole different ballgame in Germany. It's huge. And by the way, the funding of this whole thing is 8 billion euros annually. That's the equivalent of 32 billion in the United States if you, scale by population. Imagine PBS would get $32 billion in state funding. The level of blatant, deranged propaganda Americans would be exposed to cannot even be fathomed. And that is Germany. So now you know the problem. One of the problems, state-controlled media, and then the privately controlled media in Germany. And given that 80 to 90% of the population in a democracy just votes what they're being told by the media, you understand that there is a problem. And in order to break through that problem, there's of course only one solution, right? We need to grow and expand, or there are basically two solutions that all, stem from the one function. You need to break that media monopoly. It will never change. You can argue all day long about, oh, maybe it's bad to, have little children murdered. Doesn't matter. If state-controlled media says, why? What are you talking about? Don't be a Nazi. It's fine to have little children murdered because it's foreigners. You can't be against foreigners. And it's the Germans' fault of lack of integration of the knife-wielding maniacs. It's the Germans' fault we don't spend enough money on helping these guys and educating them that they shouldn't murder all our little children. If that's the message of the propaganda media, you will lose that election. So what needs to stop is that media, iron fist with that it rules over Germany. And there are only two ways of breaking this double monopoly of state-owned media and this private media that's also controlled. The first is we need to grow X, YouTube, even though YouTube, whatever, but X and the social media channels to actually get free speech. So citizen journalists can grow and talk to people. Then there's a shortcut that happened in the United States. In the United States, you have Fox News, for example. Fox News is a counterbalance to the left-wing media monopoly. That's why you have a duopoly in the conventional media in the United States. And don't underestimate the power of Fox News. Fox News might be not as powerful as the other guys combined. In the United States, you also have independent media like X, much stronger than in Germany. But you also have Fox News. And there is no such thing as Fox News in Germany. Don't get me wrong, I'm very critical of Fox News, but it's better than MSNBC and CNN. So in America, you have basically the left-wing part of the media. You have a very weak state media that doesn't matter too much. Then you have a right-wing part that is also, of course, captive to the uniparty. But, there are all kinds of things happening on Fox News. I mean, Tucker Carlson was at Fox News, right? Hegseth was at Fox News. So Fox News is not just bad. They are a counterbalance to the madness. And then, of course, in the United States, you have Joe Rogan. You have a lot of huge independent channels, and you have much stronger presence of X. All of that doesn't exist in Germany. You just have left-wing private stations and then a giant state 40% market share. And of course, these state channels, they are directly controlled by CDU and SPD. They're literally sitting on the board of these channels and control them. There's no representative of the AfD, I think even not of the Linke or something. It is completely state controlled by the two main parties. Madness. And that needs to change. As long as this doesn't change, Germany has no chance. Other European countries are not that dissimilar. The media is the key to liberating these countries and allowing the citizens to form better opinions. And there must be a battle for the media. If we do not control more pieces of the media to allow free speech and a variety of opinion, this is not going to work. The two ways is grow X, and I think that's happening, grow YouTube. And the other way is some rich people have to step up in Germany and buy some of these things out. And now we need a Murdoch or something like that in Germany that buys ProSiebenSat.1, one of these larger private pieces, and turns them into a real independent or more right-wing media outlet. Otherwise, it's going to remain a problem. So I will do more videos on that. I find this very interesting. Also, the role of the capital elite in Germany, that is insanely weak elite, right? They're not doing anything. In the United States, you see all these people, Bezos and Musk and all these people getting active. They're interested in the future of their freaking country. They're getting active in politics, but much more importantly, they're getting active in media. Silicon Valley, Zuckerberg, Google. Of course, they're not all getting active on the right side, but in my opinion, that doesn't even matter. Reid Hoffman, right? Even if you have super left-wingers like Reid Hoffman getting very involved in LinkedIn and doing all that propaganda, and Bill Gates, I think in a way that's a good thing because it encourages their peers to also get active, Peter Thiel and everyone. So I don't want to dictate anyone to, what opinion they should have. I think if Bill Gates and Reid Hoffman become active and are left-wingers and globalists, that's better than nothing because it opens the pathway for everyone else in their class to also become active. And then you get Elon Musk, you get Peter Thiel. Whereas in Germany, no one does anything. They're just sitting there. There's no activity in shaping media. So I think there's huge opportunity. The people are very upset. Something has to happen in the conventional media. A lot has to happen in the free media. And that is the key. We should keep the eyes on the target. It's not these stupid political debates. We have to understand the power structures in a democracy and how democracy actually works. And something has to happen. Now, I want to conclude this video with a quick commentary on the bigger problem here, the much bigger problem. That's all fine, what I just explained, and we should do something about it. The problem and concern I have for Germany, and of course for the rest of Europe, is that we are also in parallel entering a historically unprecedented phase for humanity. The singularity has been triggered. I made a video on that. AI is already getting out of control. AI is already in the phase where it self-replicates and improves, at least has the capability of doing so. And with that capability, do not believe that Sam Altman and Elon Musk and everyone else from Microsoft to Perplexity to Claude to all these guys do not believe that they're not deploying that capability. They would be crazy not to. And that is defined as the singularity. Once the AI becomes smart enough to self-improve, because then you have an exponential trajectory, and that has already started this year. And that means we are running into a situation where things will go completely nuts. The old nation states will be dismantled. Corporations will take their place, as in all these science fiction movies, because we have to understand that Tesla, for example, by 2035, according to my discounted cash flow model, will be bigger in revenue than the German economy. So a single company, Tesla, will make more money, will produce more value per year than all of Germany. And with that, more money than nearly all countries on Earth. And that's just Tesla. There's more coming. So in this situation, having no government, having no cohesive culture, having no people puts you in a very weak spot because the enslavement process of becoming serfs of these mega corporations will accelerate. And countries like Germany, I think, will just get dismantled and redistributed to these guys. This is a power game. And if you are that incompetent of self-governance, you will lose that power game even faster than others. So it's time to really think through that future, because that future has already begun and will from here on heavily accelerate. And I think Europe is completely a sitting duck, ruled by clowns. And even though we have a plan how to maybe change that with this media power structure and battle for, media control, or not even control, for liberation of the media, there is no time. That's the problem. In the next 5 years, this whole game will be over and we will live in a new world. And if you are not in a defensible little country that has its shit together, you will be a total victim of these mega corporations, because they will be much more powerful than anyone can imagine right now. So these are just my concerns. There are always good solutions for everything, but we have to be aware of reality. The Germans right now do not recognize what's happening. So here is my opinion on these two big topics, how we turn around these messy situations in Europe, and that we have a ticking time bomb here called the singularity and the robot revolution, and that big things are going to happen. So it's not going to be boring, but it's going to be a little dangerous. I hope that was interesting. See you next time.